There are people who attract money without asking, and there are people who beg, strive, and remain empty. The difference lies in the aura, and this video will change yours radically, whether you want it or not. Because what is being addressed here is not money itself, but the unseen field that determines who it flows toward. Machiavelli understood that wealth does not operate as a prize for those who labor the most, nor as a moral return granted to the virtuous. Wealth behaves as movement. It circulates, selects its targets, withdraws from certain individuals, and lingers around others. It is not drawn by kindness, merit, or deservingness, but by a quiet interpretation the world forms about you. And this interpretation has a name: aura. Aura is not something mystical. It is a presence that can be read. It is the unseen value that arrives before your words. It is what others register before they ever listen. It is the symbolic field that determines whether you will be pursued, overlooked, or dismissed. Wealth does not align itself with competence. It aligns with magnetism. And magnetism emerges from posture, distance, selectivity, and scarcity. Those who plead repel. Those who give excessively devalue themselves. Those who over-explain reduce their own weight. Wealth does not move toward those who request it. It responds to what asserts itself. And by the end of this video, if you stay, you will see with precision how to construct this intangible presence that redirects opportunities in your favor. I am not here to show you how to increase your income. Any manual on productivity already covers that. What you will learn here is how to emanate value, to generate return before offering anything, to embody cost before naming a price. This is not motivational material. It is a ritual of perception. When it concludes, nothing within you will remain neutral. Your presence will no longer be ordinary. Your energy will no longer be available. Your mind will no longer beg. Machiavelli spent years observing how rulers and merchants accumulated power, and he reached a harsh realization. Those who possessed more were not the ones who exerted more effort. They were the ones perceived as more valuable. Perception came before outcome. The interpretation came before the conquest. And that interpretation had nothing to do with effort. It was rooted in presence, in how you occupied space, in the frequency you projected without awareness. Most people live trying to prove their value. And that is exactly the posture that destroys any chance of being valued. Because the world does not value what is offered. It values what resists being reached. It does not respect what is always available. It respects what withdraws when it is not reciprocated. And this is not arrogance. It is mental control. It is understanding how the psychology of value works. By the end of this video, you will not be the same. The way you enter environments will change. The way you speak will change. The way you exist will change. Not because you will pretend, but because you will understand, and real understanding alters behavior effortlessly. You will not need to remember to act differently. You will simply act, because a recalibrated mind does not need reminders. But before projecting a valuable aura, we need to identify what silently corrodes it. You are not weak. You just transmit that you are available. It is not that you lack value. It is that you distribute it before being perceived. The greatest leak of aura is not born from emotion, but from anticipation. You anticipate to please. You adapt to be accepted. You explain before being provoked. You respond before being asked. You show intention before having results. This creates a silent message. I want to be chosen. And everything that wants to be chosen becomes disposable. The world does not value what is always accessible. It does not respect what arrives without a filter. It does not consider rare what is offered without psychological cost. There are three mechanisms that drain your value: excess presence, anticipatory reactivity, transparency of intention. The more you appear, the less meaning your presence has. Responding quickly communicates neediness, not efficiency. Explaining before being questioned dissolves authority. None of this is explicit. None of this is verbalized. Yet all of it is perceived. It is not an absence of power. It is dissipation. It is not an absence of value. It is exposure before the right moment. It is not an absence of capability. It is the release of your prestige before it has been defined. Your aura deteriorates when you attempt to prove that you deserve something. Your aura deteriorates when you push for understanding. Your aura deteriorates when you seek visibility instead of creating the necessity to be seen. Most people go through life trying to persuade the world that they have worth. And that very act eliminates any real possibility of being valued. When you explain your value, you imply it requires validation. When you justify your presence, you signal that it can be questioned. When you present yourself before being pursued, you reveal there is no organic demand for you. And the world absorbs this instantly. Not through language, but through indifference. The issue is not in what you express. It is in what your energy transmits before you even speak. It is in the way you step into an environment already aiming to please. It is in the tone that looks for approval. It is in the gaze that seeks permission to exist. It is in the posture that yields under any pressure. All of this produces an immediate conclusion. This person does not trust their own value. And if you do not trust it, no one else will do it for you. Now, before continuing, do something simple. If what you heard disturbs you, it is because it reached the part you still cannot control. If it feels true, it is because one part of you has already understood while another still resists. If you want to keep moving through this transformation, subscribe. Not because it benefits the channel, but because thinking differently demands commitment and repetition. If you made it this far, it was not by chance. You have already entered the mental field. Now you need to declare it. In the comments, write, "My presence generates value." Write it as an act of rupture, because those who write seal intention. Those who declare begin the process. This is not a mystical ritual. It is a psychological anchoring technique. When you write something, your brain registers it as a commitment. When you declare publicly, you create a point of no return. The phrase does not matter because it is beautiful. It matters because it forces you to assume a position. And assuming a position is the first step to abandoning the state of perpetual doubt where most people live. So write, declare, seal the intention, and prepare yourself, because what comes next is not theory. It is the law that governs all of this. There are silent laws that govern value. And the first of them is, nothing that is easy to access is valued. Machiavelli did not say this as a metaphor. He said it as a strategy. The more access a people had to the ruler, the less authority he possessed. The more the ruler spoke, the more predictable he became. The more predictable, the more vulnerable he became. This principle is not political, it is psychological, it is economic, it is social, and it applies to everything. Your time, your body, your opinion, your contact, your presence. Scarcity generates magnetism. Accessibility dissolves value. This is the first law of aura. The energy you release without a filter turns into repulsion. The second law, aura is reading. not intention. It does not matter what you want. It matters what your presence communicates before the intention arrives. You may want to be seen as trustworthy, but if your energy transmits anxiety, that is what will be read. You may want to be seen as valuable, but if your energy transmits unrestricted availability, that is what will be felt. Intention is irrelevant. What counts is the frequency you emit without realizing it. The third law, value emerges as a consequence of emotional distance. It shows up in measured speech, in the absence of instant reaction, in deliberate withdrawal. When you respond too fast, you signal urgency. Urgency signals need. Need signals weakness. And weakness erodes any chance of being respected. Distance is not coldness. It is control. It is the capacity to remain without filling every silence, without answering every provocation, act without proving every point. The fourth law, the world aligns with those who regulate frequency, not those who hold reason. Wealth does not favor those who work the hardest. It favors those who embody value before effort is even applied. This is the harsh structure of reality. You can be skilled and still be overlooked. You can be charismatic and still be dismissed. You can be honest and still remain poor. Because the mechanics of wealth do not answer to ethics. They answer to perceived impact. Those who carry an energy of abundance do not need to demonstrate. Those who operate from emotional scarcity bend, plead, resist. And this has nothing to do with how much money you have. It is about how you occupy space, how you speak, how you move, how you respond or choose not to respond, how you enter and exit environments. So all of this is instantly interpreted by the minds of others, and that interpretation defines the value you are assigned. Philosophy has long tried to explain power through morality. Psychology has tried to explain it through behavior. But Machiavelli understood something deeper. Power is governed by perception. It is irrelevant whether you are good or bad. What matters is whether you are perceived as disposable or as someone who must be taken into account. And that perception is formed in milliseconds. Before you speak, before you act, before you attempt anything. Training aura is training reading. It is training distance. It is training silence. It is producing magnetism. It is not pretending. It is not a mask. It is not performance. It is the removal of what should not have been there from the beginning. The anxiety of being accepted. The fear of being forgotten. The urgency of being validated. When you remove this, what remains is presence. And presence does not need argument. Most people live trying to accumulate reasons to be valued. They accumulate diplomas, achievements, proof, evidence, and they continue to be ignored. Because value is not born from proof. It is born from the absence of the need to prove. When you need to show that you are worth something, you have already lost. When you simply exist without needing to justify your existence, the world begins to seek you. Not because you are better, but because you are rare, and what is rare has always been expensive. Now you know the laws, but knowing does not transform anything. What transforms is what happened to those who understood this before you. And that story is not beautiful. It is brutal. When Machiavelli fell into political disgrace, no one consulted him. He was forgotten, humiliated, devalued, and in that void, something became evident. When no one has access, you become rare. He stopped defending himself. He stopped explaining himself. He stopped trying to recover influence. And in that withdrawal, he was reborn. Because when he stopped distributing his presence, others began to seek him out. His silence transformed into future supply. His absence became scarcity. His withdrawal created demand. He understood. When you do not try to be read, people begin trying to decipher you. When he returned to public life, he did not return with a speech. He returned with magnetism, without asking, without announcing, without begging for attention. The fall was not punishment, it was purification. He left human, returned impenetrable. He left available, returned expensive. This is the fate of those who train invisible energy. But most people will never go through this, because most people will never manage to withdraw. They will keep trying to force doors that do not open. They will keep explaining their value to those who did not ask. They will keep showing up where they are not expected, speaking where they are not heard, existing where they are not noticed. Machiavelli's downfall was not random. It was inevitable. Because although he had proximity to power, he did not comprehend power. While he was within the system, he behaved like everyone else. It was only after being cast out, dismissed, and overlooked that he gained distance. And from that distance, he recognized what others could not. Power does not belong to the one who speaks the most. It belongs to the one who is acknowledged without needing to speak. He spent years in exile, years without influence, years without being sought. And during that time, something within him dissolved. The desire to matter, the impulse to be acknowledged, the tension of needing inclusion. All of that disappeared. And when that disappears, what remains is pure presence, without intention, without urgency, without dependence. And pure presence is absolute magnetism. When Machiavelli returned, he did not come back requesting space. He came back taking space. He did not return explaining his thinking. He returned delivering truths that no one wished to hear, yet everyone needed to face. He did not come back as someone seeking validation. He came back as someone who possessed what others lacked, clarity without fear. And clarity without fear is the rarest form of power. His transformation did not occur because he learned more. It occurred because he stopped forcing, he stopped promoting himself, he stopped defending himself. He stopped offering his thoughts to anyone willing to listen. And within that silence, his voice gained weight. Because what is scarce has always been desired. What is easily available has always been dismissed. This is the insight most people resist. You only become valuable when you stop trying to be valuable. You only become rare when you stop being constantly accessible. You only become magnetic when you stop pursuing attention. And this is not passivity. It is strategy. It is control. It is a precise understanding of how the human mind operates. The human mind does not value what it already possesses. It values what it risks losing. Now you know what happened, but knowing is not enough. You need the method, and the method exists. Now, without abstraction, without allegory, without poetry, method, strategy, system. Phase 1, time of non-response. Space between stimulus and reaction. Practical application. When they call you, answer later. When they ask you, absorb first. When they pressure you, go silent. Immediate psychological result. The other person begins to interpret you. This is the first marker of the aura. Most people answer instantly. A message arrives, a response goes out. A question comes, explanation pours out. A provocation appears. Reaction explodes. And every immediate reaction communicates one thing. You are available. You are anxious. You need this interaction. And when you need, you lose. Not because the other person is malicious, but because the human brain is programmed to value what is difficult to reach and discard what is always accessible. Time of non-response is not a game. It is mental reconfiguration. It is training your nervous system not to react automatically. It is creating an interval between what happens and how you respond. That interval is power. Because in that interval, you choose. And whoever chooses controls. Whoever reacts is controlled. Practical examples. Someone sends you a message at 9 in the morning. You see it at 9:05. You answer at 11. Not because you are busy, but because your response is not urgent. Someone asks you a question in a meeting. You do not answer immediately. You breathe. You look. You think. And then you speak. Those seconds of pause completely change the way you are read. You stop being reactive and become deliberate. And the deliberate always seems more intelligent, more secure, more valuable. Phase 2. Economy of appearance. Appear less. Do not comment on everything. Do not always give your opinion. When you appear less, your presence carries weight. Most people comment on everything. They give opinions on everything. They appear everywhere. And because of that, their presence means nothing. Because what is always available has no psychological cost. And what has no cost has no value. Practical application. You are in a group. 10 people speak. You listen. When you finally speak, everyone listens. Not because you said something brilliant, but because your voice has become rare. You are on a social network. 100 people post every day. You post once a week. When you post, people stop. Not because your content is better, but because your presence is scarce. Economy of appearance is not about concealment. It is about deciding when to be seen. It is recognizing that every appearance carries an energetic expense and a perceptual payoff. And when you show up too often, that payoff diminishes. You turn into noise. You fade into the background. You become part of the scenery. And scenery goes unnoticed. Phase 3. Limiting mental access. Select only 3 people who are allowed into your real thoughts. When everyone knows what you feel, you become public. When only a few know, you become an entity. Most people scatter their thoughts like flyers. They tell everything to everyone. They reveal their doubts, their fears, their plans. And by doing that, they erase mystery. They erase depth. They erase value. Practical application. Someone asks what you are doing. You don't reveal everything. You say, "I'm working on something." Someone asks how you are. You don't unload. You say, "Good." Someone tries to dig into you. You don't hand it over. You smile and shift the topic. This is not about being closed. It is about being selective. It is understanding that your inner world is your greatest asset, and assets are not given away for free. Phase 4. Concise decision language. A decision does not require a speech. Yes, no, not now. I changed my mind. Power communicates briefly. The more you explain a decision, the more exposed it becomes. Because explanation turns into justification, and justification becomes defense. And whoever is defending is under attack, even if no one is actually attacking. Practical application. Someone invites you somewhere. You don't want to go. You don't say, "I'd love to, but you know how it is. I have a lot going on and it just won't work because..." You say, "I can't make it." That's it. It ends there. No explanation, no justification, no guilt. You decide. You don't explain. You execute. And execution without explanation is authority. Phase 5. Periods of absence. Step away. Withdraw. Do not always be present. Absence generates speculation. Speculation generates value. Most people fear disappearing. They fear being forgotten, so they stay constantly present. constantly available, constantly visible, and because of that, they are never truly seen. Because what is always present does not create curiosity. It does not create absence. It does not create desire. Practical application. You disappear for 3 days. You do not post. You do not answer. You do not appear. When you return, people look for you. They ask about you. They notice you. Not because you did something extraordinary, but because you created a void, and the void is always filled with attention. You disappear from a social environment for 2 weeks. When you return, your entrance is noticed, not because you changed, but because your absence created mental space. And mental space is value. Aura is the consequence of well-positioned energy. It is not performative attitude. It is not dominant theatricality. It is selective simplicity. Training aura is not being easily read, not giving away intention early, not allowing unrestricted access. And the result of this is inevitable. You become expensive. Now you have the method. But method without execution is only information. And information without transformation is entertainment. What happens when you apply this for real? No one tells you that. Something changes. You do not need to sell yourself. You do not need to justify your presence. You do not need to guarantee importance. The world begins to adjust its movement. It calls you, it calculates you, it observes you, and everything that used to flee now returns. People perceive value before delivery. You attract before offering. You receive before asking. Your internal economy changes, and the external one follows. In a short time, you will notice fewer conflicts, fewer invasions, fewer demands, more invitations, more doors, more return. When the aura changes, destiny changes. But this is not magical. It is mechanical. It is the direct consequence of how you have come to be read by others. And how you are read determines how you are treated. Before you entered environments trying to prove something. Now you enter and occupy. Before you spoke trying to convince. Now you speak and others consider. Before you offered and were ignored. Now you wait and are sought. The difference is not in what you do. It is in how you do it. It is in the frequency you emit. It is in the absence of urgency. It is in effortless presence. People begin to treat you differently. Not because you changed clothes, haircut, or physical posture, but because you changed energy. And energy does not lie. It cannot be faked for long. Either you truly understood, or you are only imitating. And imitation always collapses. Real understanding does not. You begin to notice that chasing is no longer necessary. Insisting loses its place. Forcing outcomes stops making sense. Because the moment your aura shifts, access comes before your arrival. People reach out before you search. Opportunities appear before you request them. And this is not chance, it is perception. The world interprets you differently and reacts accordingly. Your relationships start to reorganize. Before you were constantly available and barely valued. Now your presence is selective and carries weight. Before you over-explained and were frequently questioned. Now you speak little and face almost no resistance. Before you felt the need to justify yourself and came across as fragile. Now you decide, and that alone projects strength. In your professional life, the shift becomes evident. You no longer need to convince in interviews. Your presence already signals capability. You stop asking for opportunities. They begin to present themselves. You no longer accept whatever comes. You choose. And choosing is power. Power is luxury. Luxury is value. Value is wealth. Financially, the shift is even harsher. Not because of luck or sudden gain, but because money gravitates toward what feels expensive. And expensive is not about price, it is about perception. When you transmit emotional lack, you attract financial lack. When you transmit energetic abundance, material abundance follows. This is not attraction theory. It is psychology in action. It is how the market perceives value, and responds to it. You no longer ask for respect. You receive it. You no longer chase recognition. It finds you. You no longer depend on validation. You exist without it. And this is the true transformation. It is not outside, it is within. But what is within always manifests outward, always. The most interesting part, you stop worrying about what others think. Not because you became indifferent, but because you understood that what others think is a consequence of what you project, and you control what you project. So you stop reacting to the world and begin creating it. Within the limits of what is possible, obviously, but those limits are much greater than you imagine. Now only one thing remains: the call. Today you learned what was never taught to you. Wealth is not an object. It is frequency. Value is not speech. It is energetic reading. And power is not imposition. It is silent interpretation. If you understood, Anon declare, my presence generates value. Not as a phrase, but as the beginning of your mental reconfiguration. Continue the training, because your presence is worth more than you imagine. And when your aura becomes expensive, everything around you begins to change. But do not fool yourself. This is not for everyone. Most people will listen, will understand, and will continue doing exactly what they have always done. They will continue offering themselves. They will continue explaining themselves. They will continue begging for attention, and they will continue being ignored. Because transformation does not come from knowledge, it comes from application, and application demands something that few have: discipline to go against instinct. Your instinct says, answer fast, show interest, prove your value. Your instinct is wrong. Your instinct was programmed for tribal survival, not for modern prosperity. You need to reprogram it. And reprogramming is uncomfortable. It is going against every impulse. It is holding your tongue when you want to speak. It is disappearing when you want to appear. It is staying silent when you want to defend yourself. Machiavelli did not write for the masses. He wrote for the few who can see beyond the obvious. He did not try to please. He tried to instruct. He did not soften truths. He delivered them raw. And whoever could not digest them rejected them. Whoever could transformed empires. You decide which side you want to be on. Your presence is worth more than you imagine. But it will only truly be worth something when you stop distributing it for free, when you stop asking permission to exist, when you stop justifying yourself, when you simply are, without needing to prove that you are. In that moment, you become expensive, and the expensive has always been sought, has always been paid for, has always been respected. The training begins now, not when you feel ready. Now. Because ready is an illusion. No one is ready. But those who act as if they were create real results. Those who wait to be ready keep waiting. And waiting creates nothing. It only consumes time. And time is the only resource you cannot recover. Comment, subscribe. The next videos are already on the screen. Continue your mental training.